The holographic star map flickered in the dim blue light of the high command chamber, casting shifting shadows across the faces of the gathered delegates. High Commander Vexilor of the Zepyrian Dominion flexed his clawed hands against the polished obsidian table, his scaled face twisting in irritation. Around him, representatives from a dozen species murmured in their native tongues, the universal translators in their collars buzzing softly. "Enough," Vexilor snapped, his forked tongue flicking out. "We've wasted enough time on this human nonsense. The Ravagers are at the Cygnus cluster, and we're arguing about inviting A-tier, Fey species to our war council." Admiral Kesva clicked her mandibles in agreement, her chitinous armor reflecting the star map's glow. The Vorak tactician leaned forward, her forearms gesturing sharply. "Their fastest ships take 3 cycles to reach what our scouts cross in 1. Their energy signatures are pitiful. What exactly would they contribute besides more corpses for the Ravagers to repurpose?" A soft chime interrupted as Ambassador Drell of the Luminari floated closer, his bioluminescent skin pulsing with restrained frustration. "They've fought the Ravagers before, on their own border worlds, and survived." Vexilor barked a laugh that echoed through the chamber. "Barely. Their victory at Tau Ceti was losing only 80% of their forces instead of all of them." He waved a clawed hand, and the hologram shifted to display grainy footage of human ships, boxy, angular things with crude propulsion systems. "Look at these relics. They still use projectile weapons by the void." Kesva's antennae twitched in amusement. "Charming. They'll throw rocks at the machine swarm while we die waiting for their reinforcements." Drell's glow dimmed. "Their persistence alone is irrelevant," Vexilor interrupted. "War isn't won by stubbornness. It is won by strength." He tapped a control, and the hologram zoomed in on Earth's defense grid. "Their orbital platforms are decades behind, even the Crix collectives. Their planetary shields can't stop a determined meteor, let alone a Ravager planet cracker." A murmur ran through the chamber. Representative Goroth of the Thulak Combine snorted through his nasal vents. "I've seen their medical reports. They still die from infections, fragile, squishy things. Why are we even discussing this?" Kesva leaned back, her armored carapace clicking against the chair. "Sentimentality, the same weakness that makes the humans useless in war." She gestured to the star map. "The Ravagers adapt to everything we throw at them within hours. What could these primitives possibly—" The doors hissed open, cutting her off. A young Zepyrian aide scurried in, his scales flushed with embarrassment. "High Commander, the human delegation." Vexilor's tail lashed. "I gave orders they weren't to be admitted." The aide flinched. "They didn't ask, sir. They transmitted this." He tapped his wrist display, and a new hologram flared to life, a human male in a black uniform, his scarred face set in grim lines. "High Command," the human said, his voice rough. "This is Captain Ryan Blake of the United Earth Systems Navy. We know you're voting today on whether to include us in your little club." His lips twisted in something too sharp to be a smile. "Don't bother, we're coming anyway." The transmission cut out. Silence hung in the chamber for 3 heartbeats before Kesva burst into clicking laughter. "Oh, this is precious. Their defiance is almost adorable, like a hatchling challenging a battle cruiser." Vexilor's claws dug grooves into the table. "Arrogant mammals. They'll get themselves slaughtered." Drell watched the empty space where the hologram had been, his glow flickering thoughtfully. "Or," he said very softly, "they'll remind the galaxy why the Ravagers avoid human space." The chamber erupted into derisive chatter. Vexilor silenced them with a snarl. "Ina, the vote is called. All in favor of rejecting human assistance." Every delegate raised their appendages except Drell. The hologram recorded the decision in glowing red runes. Unanimous rejection, Fey abstention. Kesva stretched her arms, satisfied. "There, now we can focus on real warriors." Outside the chamber, unnoticed by any of the delegates, a small data drone detached from the ceiling and vanished into the ventilation system. Its last transmission, encrypted in old human military code, pulsed toward the edge of the system where a single boxy warship waited in the dark. The archives of the Elders hummed with forbidden energy, its black stone walls etched in shifting runes that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Captain Ryan Blake adjusted his uniform as the massive doors groaned open before him. He hadn't been invited, not officially. The Galactic Federation's high command had only allowed him to observe as a courtesy, a token human presence in their sacred halls. Keeper Yurthak waited inside, his elongated frame draped in tattered robes that whispered against the floor. His species had no name anymore, just echoes of a civilization that had burned itself out millennia before the first human walked upright. Blake's boots clicked against the obsidian floor, the sound too loud in the tomb, like silence. "You are late," Yurthak rasped, his voice like dry leaves crushed underfoot. Blake smirked. Traffic was hell. The ancient scholar didn't laugh. His milky eyes flickered toward the holographic displays, flickering to life around them. Scenes of war, of fire, of civilizations reduced to ash. The Galactic Federation's delegation stood at the center, High Commander Vexler's scaled tail twitching with impatience. "Enough theatrics," Keeper Vexler snapped. "We came for tactical assessments, not history lessons." Yurthak's gnarled fingers traced a rune, and the hologram shifted. Earth trenches, nuclear fire, cities burning under orbital bombardment. Blake's jaw tightened. He recognized those wars. "You dismiss them," Yurthak murmured. "The humans, the only species to survive their own self-destruction." Admiral Kesva's mandibles clacked in amusement. "They nearly wiped themselves out. That's not strength, that's incompetence." Blake's fingers twitched, but he stayed silent. Yurthak's laugh was a dry, rattling sound. "You see failure, I see practice." The holograms changed again, human ships, crude but brutal, their designs evolving through centuries of conflict. While your civilizations perfected art and philosophy, they perfected war. While you built shields, they built thicker armor. While you sought elegance, they built redundancy. Vexler snorted. "Their technology is decades behind ours." "Yet they endure," Yurthak countered. "The Ravagers adapt, they learn, but humans." The holograms froze on a single image. A human soldier, standing in ruins, grinning through the blood on his teeth. Humans don't change. They find what works, and they do it harder. Kesva shifted uncomfortably. "Poetic nonsense. Their ships are slow, their weapons primitive." "Primitive?" Yurthak's voice cracked like a whip. He tapped another rune. The hologram zoomed in. A human railgun, its projectile tearing through a Ravager scout ship in a burst of molten debris. "Your energy weapons are clean. Theirs are messy. You worry about efficiency. They worry about results." Blake allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. Vexler's crest flared in irritation. "We didn't come here for a human propaganda session. The Ravagers are at Cygnus. Now we need solutions, not—" "Then listen," Yurthak interrupted. "The Ravagers are machines. They learn, they adapt, but humans persist. They will outlast you, outfight you. And when the Ravagers break against them like waves on stone, you will finally understand." The chamber fell silent. Kesva turned to leave. "We're wasting time." Yurthak's final words followed them out, echoing in the hollow dark. "No, you are wasting them." Blake lingered as the others departed. The holograms still played. Human history, human wars, human stubbornness etched in fire and steel. Yurthak's milky eyes found his. "They will not listen." Blake shrugged. "They never do." The ancient scholar nodded slowly. "Then let them learn the hard way." Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere among them, the Ravager fleet gathered. Blake's smile didn't reach his eyes. The bridge of the USN Defiance hummed with quiet intensity, the kind of silence that came before a storm. Captain Ryan Blake stood at the viewport, his scarred hands clasped behind his back. The stars stretched endlessly before him, cold and indifferent. His reflection in the reinforced glass showed a face that had seen too much war, a jagged scar running from temple to jaw, eyes that didn't blink often enough. "Status report," Blake said, his voice gravelly from years of barking orders over gunfire. Commander Lisa Hayes didn't look up from her tactical display. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface, her neural implants processing data faster than any organic brain. "Fleet's ready, Captain. All ships report green across the board. Even the bastard children." She smirked, nodding toward the smaller jury. Rigged vessels in their formation. Engineer Jake Morrison leaned against the weapons console, grinning like a man who'd just won the lottery. "You should see the looks on the Fed scouts' faces. They keep scanning us like we're hiding something." He tapped a command into his datapad. "Which, technically, we are," Blake finished. He turned away from the stars, his boots clicking against the steel deck. The Defiance wasn't like the sleek, curved Federation ships. It was all angles and armor plating, a brute force answer to every problem. No fancy energy shields, just layers of reinforced alloy thick enough to laugh off plasma fire. Hayes flicked a strand of dark hair from her face. "Federation Command officially denied our request to join the front lines again." She snorted. Their exact phrasing was "Tier. Fey assets are not cleared for high-threat engagements." Morrison barked a laugh. "Tier Fey. Oh, that's rich. They haven't seen what our primitive railguns do to adaptive armor." Blake exhaled through his nose, a slow, deliberate breath. Had heard it all before. The whispers, the dismissals. Too slow, too weak, too human. His fingers brushed the sidearm at his hip. An old-fashioned ballistic pistol in a galaxy of plasma rifles. "They're scared," he said finally. Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Of us, not of us, of what we represent." Blake tapped his temple. "I've spent centuries perfecting tactics, optimization, elegance. And here we come, dragging war back to its roots, blood, steel, and stubbornness." A proximity alert chimed. Hayes' eyes flicked to the screen. Federation scout vessel just jumped out, probably running back to High Command to report how adorable our fleet looks. Morrison stretched, cracking his knuckles. "So we sitting this one out, Captain? Playing nice like the feds want?" Blake's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Set course for Cygnus, Fey, maximum burn." Hayes blinked. "That's the front lines." "Yes." Blake turned back to the viewport. The stars seemed sharper now, like knives waiting to be gripped. "Let them see what primitive looks like." Morrison whooped, slamming his fist onto the console. "Hell yes. It'll wake up the Old Testament." Hayes shot him a look. "You named a weapon system after the Bible?" "Part of it," Morrison corrected, already typing furiously. "The fun part." The Defiance's engines roared to life, a deep, throaty growl that vibrated through the hull. Alien ships might glide silently through the void, but humans announced themselves. As the fleet jumped to warp, Blake allowed himself one last look at the star chart. Cygnus, Fey glowed red, a dying system, a graveyard waiting to happen. Perfect. Humans had always fought best with their backs against the wall. The Battle of Cygnus, Fey began with silence, not the quiet of peace, but the terrible stillness before annihilation. The Ravagers' swarm emerged from warp like a storm of razored shadows, their ships all jagged edges and flickering void shields. The Federation fleet, gleaming silver dreadnoughts and graceful destroyers, formed up in perfect formation, their energy cannons humming to life. High Commander Vexler's voice crackled across the comms. "All ships, engage adaptive fire pattern Delta 7. Target their command nodes." His scaled fingers tightened around the armrests of his command throne. This would be over quickly. The first volley of plasma lances streaked across the void, striking Ravager vessels with pinpoint accuracy. For 3 glorious seconds it seemed to work. Then the Ravagers adapted. Their black hulls shimmered, absorbing the energy blasts. The next Federation salvo splashed harmlessly against suddenly reflective armor, switching to kinetic. Admiral Kesva barked, her insectoid carapace twitching. The Vorak battleships unleashed a storm of hypervelocity slugs. The Ravagers simply shifted, their forms flowing like liquid to let the projectiles pass through. On the bridge of the USN Defiance, Captain Ryan Blake watched the slaughter unfold on the tactical holo. "They're getting torn apart," Commander Hayes muttered, her augmented eyes flicking between data streams. The Federation flagship, the Pride of Zapiria, took a Ravager energy lance straight through its primary reactor. It detonated in a silent flash, taking 3 cruisers with it. Jake Morrison leaned over an engineering console, grinning like a madman. "Oh, this is beautiful. Watch how they keep changing tactics. See that? They're trying frequency modulation on their beams now." He tapped the display where another Federation cruiser exploded. "Won't work. Ravagers learn too fast." Blake cracked his knuckles. Time to show them how humans fight. The Defiance's engines flared to life, the massive warship lurching forward like a beast unleashed. Around it, the rest of the human fleet, boxy, ugly things covered in armor plating, followed suit. A Zapirian scout frigate spotted them first. "Commander Vexlor, the human vessels are..." The transmission cut off as a Ravager tendril. Ship bisected the frigate. Vexlor snarled, "Ignore them, they're too slow to matter." On his tactical display, the human ships crawled toward the battle at barely half the speed of Federation vessels. Their weapons powered up. Crude magnetic accelerators and chemical-propelled slugs. The Zapirian officers exchanged glances, primitive. Then the first Ravager swarm hit the human line. 100 black tendrils lashed out at the USN Ironclad. Energy beams meant to slice through Federation shields instead, scorched paint-off meter. Thick steel, the Ironclad shuddered. Then its forward batteries roared to life. 1,000 tungsten rods screamed through the void at Faye, shredding 3 Ravager ships into glittering debris. "Report," Vexlor demanded as his own ship took another hit. Human vessel Ironclad took direct hits to its forward armor. A tactical officer stammered, "Minimal damage. Their structural integrity is..." The officer froze. "Commander, their hull readings. They don't have shields, just solid metal." On the Defiance's bridge, Blake grinned as another Ravager volley slammed into them. The ship rocked, alarms blaring. "Damage," he barked. Hayes didn't look up from her console. "Armor layer 3 compromised. We've got 7 more layers," she smirked. "They're scratching the paint." Morrison whooped as the Defiance's main railgun battery fired. A Ravager command ship vanished in a flash of light. "That's for the Pride of Zapiria." He turned to Blake, eyes wild. "Permission to activate secondary systems." Blake watched the tactical display. The Federation fleet was down to 40% strength. The human line held. "Do it." Across the human fleet, armored plates slid back. Hidden weapon ports yawned open. Federation sensors lit up with sudden energy spikes. Vexlor's tactical officer screamed, "Commander, the human ships, their energy signatures, just jumped 500%. On the open comms, Blake's voice cut through the chaos. "Federation fleet, this is Captain Blake. Suggest you fall back behind our line." A pause. "Unless you want to see what real firepower looks like." The Defiance's main cannon, a weapon the Federation scans had dismissed as inefficient, glowed white. Hot. The Ravagers hesitated for the first time in recorded history. Then hell opened its jaws. The Ravager swarm pulsed like a living storm, their ships shifting and reforming mid-battle. Federation vessels shattered under the onslaught, their elegant energy shields flickering out one by one. High Commander Vexlor's flagship reeled from another impact. its sleek hull rupturing along the starboard flank. "Fall back," Vexlor roared over the comms. "Regroup at..." A human voice cut through the static. "Negative. High Commander, hold position." On the bridge of the USN Defiance, Captain Ryan Blake watched the tactical display with calm detachment. His scarred hands rested lightly on the command chair's armrests. Behind him, Engineer Jake Morrison tapped at a console with manic energy, his grin visible even in profile. "Sir," Commander Lisa Hayes reported, her AI-enhanced eyes tracking a dozen threats simultaneously. "Federation casualties approaching 60%. Ravagers are adapting to their shield harmonics." Blake nodded. "Time to show them what adaptation really looks like." "Morrison, Old Testament status." The engineer's fingers flew across the controls, primed and pissed. "Cap, but you sure you wanna do it?" Across the battlefield, alien sensors suddenly flared with warnings. The Defiance's armored hull plates slid apart, revealing rows of massive cylindrical protrusions. Federation tactical officers gasped as their scanners identified the weapons. "Those are kinetic launchers?" Admiral Kesva's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "Primitive slug throwers." The first railgun barrage tore through the Ravager formation. Unlike energy weapons, there was nothing to adapt to, just hypersonic tungsten rods punching clean through adaptive armor. A Ravager cruiser split in half, its biomechanical systems sparking uselessly. Vexlor's hologram appeared on the Defiance's bridge, his scaled face contorted. "What madness is this? Your technology is centuries behind." Blake interrupted. "You keep waiting for us to fight smarter. We don't." He leaned forward. "Hayes, execute pattern Omega." Across the human fleet, ships that had seemed sluggish now moved with terrifying precision. Not elegant, just brutally efficient. The Defiance took a direct hit from a Ravager plasma lance. Alarms blared, but the ship barely shuddered. Morrison whooped. "That is what 3 meters of steel plating gets you." Federation engineers stared at their scans in horror. The human ships had minimal shielding, just layer upon layer of reinforced armor. Their power signatures were inefficient, their engines crude, and their weapons utterly unstoppable. A Ravager command ship pulsed with ominous energy, preparing some new adaptation. Blake didn't wait. Fire Old Testament. Deep in the Defiance's belly, a missile the size of a small starship ignited its engines. Federation sensors scrambled to identify the weapon until it detonated halfway to its target. Space itself seemed to tear. A miniature singularity bloomed, swallowing 3 Ravager vessels instantly. The remaining ships recoiled, their perfect formations breaking for the first time in recorded history. Kesva's voice came through the comms, shaking. That violates every Geneva suggestions." Morrison chuckled. "We're real good at making exceptions." Blake opened a fleet-wide channel. His voice carried across the battlefield, through every Federation ship's speakers. "You called us weak because we don't fight clean. You called us primitive because we don't fight fair." The Defiance's railguns cycled again, their capacitors humming. "But we didn't survive 10,000 years of war by playing by the rules." On the view screen, the remaining human ships formed into a simple wall formation. No complex maneuvers, just overlapping fields of fire. The Ravagers hesitated, their adaptive algorithms struggling against an enemy that refused to behave predictably. Hayes' fingers danced across her console. "Sir, Federation ships are requesting tactical linkage." Blake smiled. "Tell them to watch and learn." The Defiance surged forward, its battered hull gleaming under alien starlight. Behind it, the human fleet followed, not with grace, but with the relentless inevitability of a tidal wave. Morrison leaned back, cracking his knuckles. "Man, I love it when they underestimate us." The bridge of the USN Defiance shuddered as another Ravager energy beam scorched across its hull. Warning lights flashed red, but Captain Blake didn't even glance at them. He leaned forward in his command chair, fingers steepled, watching the carnage unfold on the main display. The Federation fleet was in tatters. Alien ships burned in the void, their elegant designs torn apart by the relentless Ravager swarm. Blake tapped a button on his armrest. Open fleet, wide comms. Every channel, every frequency. I want the entire damn galaxy to hear this. A chime confirmed the link was live. "Attention, Galactic Federation," Blake said, his voice rough but calm. "This is Captain Ryan Blake of the United Earth Space Navy. You called us weak, you called us primitive, but let me tell you something about humans." Outside, the Defiance's railguns roared to life, punching through a Ravager cruiser like it was made of paper. The alien ship detonated in a silent fireball. "We invented war," Blake continued. "While your species were still figuring out fire, we were sharpening sticks to kill each other. While you built your first cities, we were already burning them down. You think war is about honor, about tactics? No. War is about surviving, and humans were very good at surviving." On the tactical display, the Ravager fleet shifted, their adaptive algorithms scrambling to counter the human ships. It didn't matter. The Defiance's guns kept firing, round after round, unrelenting. Commander Hayes smirked from her station. "They're trying to predict our next move, sir." Blake grinned. "That's the funny part. There is no next move. We don't have tactics. We just hit them until they stop moving." He keyed the comm again. "You Federation types, you fight clean, you fight smart, but the Ravagers, they don't care about your rules. They don't care about your honor. And guess what? Neither do we." A Ravager dreadnought loomed on the screen, its massive energy cannons charging. The Defiance's shields were at bay. Blake didn't flinch. "Morrison, you got that thing ready?" From engineering, Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the intercom. "Oh, you're gonna love this, Cap." Blake leaned back in his chair. "Federation Command, you wanted to know why we don't use fancy shields, why our ships are so damn ugly. It's because we don't need pretty, we need durable. You see, when you've spent centuries trying to kill each other, you learn something important. The best defense isn't avoiding the hit, it's taking the hit and hitting back harder." The Ravager dreadnought fired. A beam of pure annihilation lanced toward the Defiance. The ship rocked, alarms screamed, then the dust cleared. The Defiance was still there. Hull scorched, armor cracked, but intact. Blake wiped blood from his lip. "See, that's how humans fight." Morrison whooped over the comms. "Project Old Testament is live. Cap, say the word." Blake stood, gripping the armrests. "Federation allies, if you're still listening, here is a lesson from Earth's history. When the enemy thinks they've got you cornered, when they think you're done, that's when you show them what real war looks like." He raised his hand. "Morrison, light him up." Deep in the Defiance's belly, something ancient and terrible awoke. A missile the size of a skyscraper hummed to life, its warhead pulsing with forbidden energy. Blake's voice dropped to a growl. "You wanted to see human war machines? Fine. Now watch how humans win." The missile launched, and the galaxy learned why you never ever underestimated humanity. The Ravager swarm recoiled as the human fleet advanced. Their adaptive armor shimmered, recalculating, waiting for the clever tactics that never came. "All ships," Blake's voice crackled across the comms. "Fire at will, and by will, I mean everything." The USN Defiance shuddered as its railgun batteries discharged. Magnetic coils glowed white, hot-hurling tungsten slugs at relativistic speeds. A Ravager cruiser disintegrated, not from precise targeting, but from sheer kinetic overload. Admiral Kesva's voice cut through the chaos on the Federation channel. "What are they doing? This isn't warfare, it is butchery." On the Defiance's bridge, Commander Hayes smirked as her fingers danced across tactical displays. "They keep waiting for our next move. There is no next move." The human fleet had formed into a blunt wedge, warships packed so tightly their armor plating scraped together. No elegant flanking maneuvers, no feints or deceptions, just a wall of guns advancing relentlessly. A Ravager dreadnought pivoted, its energy cannons charging. A dozen Federation ships scattered, anticipating the killing blow. The Defiance accelerated. "Captain," Morrison called from engineering, "you're about to make my day very expensive." Blake grinned, ramming speed. The Defiance's prow, a solid 50 meters of reinforced tungsten, slammed into the dreadnought's midsection. Alien metal screamed, atmosphere vented in frozen plumes. The dreadnought's spine snapped, its adaptive armor useless against raw mass. Federation comms erupted. "They hit them. Stars save us. They're brawling in space." Morrison whooped as damage reports flooded his screen. "Hull integrity at Fay. That is better than the simulations." The Ravagers hesitated. Their machine intellects, honed across 1,000 battles, had no protocol for this. Every algorithm expected sophistication. The humans gave them momentum. Blake opened a fleet-wide channel. "Listen up, boys and girls. They think we're dumb. They're right. So let's be the dumbest sons of bitches this galaxy's ever seen." The human ships charged. Railguns fired until their barrels warped. Missile pods emptied in single salvos. Fighters launched, not for precision strikes, but to crash into Ravager engines. A Vorak tactical officer aboard the Federation flagship gaped at his screens. Their weapons, they're not more advanced. They're just bigger. HFY watched in horror as a human destroyer, its hull breached in 3 places, continued firing. How? Their damage control systems are primitive. On the Defiance, Hayes answered the unspoken question. "We don't have damage control, we have spare parts and duct tape." The tide turned. Federation ships, emboldened, abandoned their elegant formations. A Zephyrian cruiser copied the human tactic, firing all weapons simultaneously. A Ravager scout ship vaporized. Vexilor's voice boomed across the command channel. "Blake, what madness is this?" Blake wiped blood from a gash on his forehead. "Old Earth saying, Commander. If brute force isn't working, you're not using enough of it." The Defiance's remaining railguns cycled again. Across the battlefield, human ships battered, burning. Some held together by little more than pride, refused to yield. Morrison triggered the final surprise, activating dumbfire protocols. Every human missile's guidance system disengaged. Warheads streaked blindly into the Ravager lines. The machines adapted instantly, redirecting point defenses to intercept sophisticated targeting patterns that no longer existed. The explosions lit up the void. HFY stared at the tactical display. The Ravager fleet, undefeated for centuries, was retreating. Blake leaned back in his command chair. The Defiance's bridge was a wreck. Sparking consoles, cracked viewports, the acrid smell of burnt wiring. He tapped the comm. "Federation fleet, this is Captain Blake. Welcome to human warfare." Silence. Then, one by one, alien ships fell into formation behind the Defiance, not leading, following. Morrison popped open an ancient metal lunchbox, revealing a single undamaged sandwich. "Well, that went okay." Outside, the stars burned cold and bright. Somewhere ahead, the next battle waited. The Defiance's engines flared. The human fleet, broken but unbeaten, moved to meet it. The Ravager's swarm broke. For the first time in recorded history, the machine horrors turned their blackened hulls and fled. The wreckage of Cygnus, Fay burned around them, Federation and human ships floating side by side in the debris field. The USN Defiance hung at the center of it all, her armor pitted and scorched but her guns still humming with power. On the bridge, Commander Hayes wiped blood from her forehead and grinned. "They're running, Captain. Actual, honest, to God running." Blake leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking. "Told you we'd get the job done." His voice carried across the open comms to every surviving Federation ship. Anyone still need convincing about human primitives? Static crackled for 3 full seconds before High Commander Vexilor's scaled face appeared on screen. The Zepyrian's frills were flattened against his skull, his golden eyes wide. Your methods were unconventional. Jake Morrison burst out laughing from the engineering station. Unconventional, boss. I think he means brutally effective. The Vorak Admiral Kesva shoved into frame, her chitinous limbs twitching. Your weapons should not have worked. Our scans showed your technology was inferior. Blake exchanged a look with Hayes. Yeah, about that. He tapped a command into his console. See, we figured you'd scan us, so we let you see what we wanted you to see. The Defiance's outer plating shuddered. Sections of hull plating detached, revealing rows of fresh missile pods. Hidden railgun ports slid open along her flanks. The ship seemed to grow teeth before their eyes. Vexilor's frills stood straight up. You deceived us? More like let you deceive yourselves, Hayes said. You saw primitive and stopped looking. Big mistake. A new voice cut through the comms. Ambassador Drell, his soft tones laced with something like awe. You hid your true capabilities, but why? Blake's smile faded. Because we learned that lesson the hard way. Show all your cards at once, and someone always finds a way to counter them. He leaned forward. But keep a few aces up your sleeve. That is how you survive. The bridge fell silent as the alien commanders processed this. Kesva's mandibles clicked rapidly. Your ships are still slower than ours. Your engines less efficient. How did you? Because we don't fight fair, Morrison interrupted. He spun in his chair, grease smeared across his grinning face. You guys kept waiting for us to get smarter, to adapt like you do, but we don't play that game. He tapped his temple. We fight dumb. Straight lines, big guns, more armor. Works every time. Vexilor's claws flexed. You must share this technology with the Federation. The Ravagers will return. And no, Blake's voice cut like steel. We'll fight alongside you, but Earth's secrets stay with Earth. He nodded to Hayes, who closed the channel despite the alien commander's protests. As the screen went dark, Hayes exhaled. Think they'll try to take it by force? Blake stood stretching his back with a series of pops. Let them try. He walked to the viewport, where the first human reinforcements were already warping in. Dozens of fresh warships, each uglier and more heavily armed than the last. They still don't get it. Today wasn't our best. It was our warning shot. Morrison whooped, slapping his console. Hell yeah, so when do we show them the really good stuff? Hayes groaned. Please tell me, Project Old Testament wasn't the really good stuff. Blake's grin returned, slow and dangerous. Oh, we've got plenty more where that came from. Outside, the human fleet turned as one, their engines flaring as they set course for the next battle. Behind them, the surviving Federation ships hesitated, then one by one, fell into formation behind the Defiance, following, not leading, the way it should be.